Hello, what's happening? Happy Thursday, all that sort of thing. Wanted to check in on a couple of items. First, I want to say thanks for great questions and listening in on conversation with Tara Costa Howard. She really got a kick out of it, and she also sent some information on on getting some sort of money back from the government if you've got like a FAFSA. And so I got to remember to post that on our website. Okay, these are the things that I wanted to talk about today. In the newspaper today, in the Wall Street Journal, they talked about the budget deficit that ballooned in June, and that's the federal budget deficit. And then they also talked about local governments cutting spending. And so just real briefly with local government cutting spending, and it's too bad because we're not going to have enough time to cover local government in here, and I really enjoy covering it. Since I'm on the village board of Glen Ellen, I'm pretty familiar with it, and so I was hoping to get a chance to cover it, but whatever, that's the way it goes. And so just the one thing that it did list in the Wall Street Journal, that governments have cut 1.5 million jobs since March, mostly in education, and more reductions are likely coming unless there's a quick economic recovery. And so, I don't think there's going to be a quick economic recovery. And I did say that some of these local governments, like let's say a village government or a city government, relies heavily on sales tax, and of course sales tax are down. And the state government relies heavily on sales tax. So when that happens, you're going to have less revenue coming in. And there's a rule pretty much with just about all states and local governments that you have to have a balanced budget. So it's going to be hard for them to do that without cutting staff. And the other thing that I had said was the budget deficit ballooned in June. And I had highlighted a couple of things here. It says the U.S. budget deficit totaled $863 billion in June, nearly as much as the entire 2019 deficit. So that's a huge deficit for 1 month, and we're not surprised because of course, they've had to pay out all these things. So it says outlays soared $1.1 trillion last month, nearly half of which went to emergency small business loans. It also said that outlays for jobless benefits climbed from $2 billion in June 2019 to $116 billion last month. So from $2 billion to $116 billion. Nearly half of which was the extra $600 in weekly benefits that Congress approved. It also goes on to say spending for other safety net programs also climbed last month, including outlays for nutrition assistance, Medicaid, and emergency funds for hospitals. And finally, it said that federal revenue sank 28% to $242 billion. And of course, that's because there's less tax revenue coming in. And then also, if you hadn't done your taxes this year, then you got to postpone it until July, and so some tax revenue hasn't come in because of that also. So, of course, this big budget deficit, what are we going to do about the big budget deficit? And what really is going to happen is they're going to have to borrow the money, they're going to sell bonds. How are we going to sell bonds? Basically, the Federal Reserve is going to buy them. And so the Federal Reserve, I'm sure, is going to step in, and they're going to pay, the 0.5% interest or 0.6% interest that it is right now, and then the federal government's not going to have to worry about it because eventually they'll, of course, supposedly have to pay back the Federal Reserve, but the Federal Reserve could also forgive it at some point too. And so technically it's probably just going to be a wash. The real issue for it is, will it create inflation? And so that's one thing that we have to be concerned about. Will that lead to some sort of inflation? So we have to watch what's happening with those things. If you're concerned about inflation, then you need to make sure that your wages are going up to keep up with inflation. Or if you're an investor, make sure that you're in a stock or something along those lines where it's going to keep up with it, like real estate also keeps up with it. So just some things to keep in mind. Last week I had said I was going to cover how a precinct works, and so I wanted to take a quick look at this precinct map. And this map shows Milton Township precinct, and there's in DuPage County like Naperville Township, York Township, Addison Township, Downers Township. This is Milton Township, and Milton Township primarily includes Glen Ellen and Wheaton. And so I know this is kind of hard to see. As a matter of fact, it's even hard to see like this. I live in precinct 2 in Glen Ellen, and so precinct 2 is over here somewhere. And so if you live in precinct 2, then you're going to have it's called a committeeman in the suburbs and a precinct captain in the city. And so the Democrats have committeemen and the Republicans have it. Same thing in the city. Precinct captains, the Democrats have them, and the Republicans. You can imagine in the city, the precinct captains are very important in the Democrat side, right? Like if you're a precinct captain in Mike Madigan's district in Chicago, then you're probably working for the city or working for the state or working for the county, something like that. You get some sort of a government job, and then on the times that you're not working, then you're out like knocking on doors, trying to make sure that they re-elect Mike Madigan and other Democrats in that area. And so it's kind of an important job in some areas. So this is something that's kind of interesting with like these people. What they do is they represent the party. And so they'll go from door to door and knock on the doors, especially around election time, and say, hey, this is information on the candidates that are running. Well, we already know about like Donald Trump and Joe Biden, right? And maybe we already know about, the U.S. Senate race or even your congressional race. But you probably don't know who your state representative is, who your state senator is, who's running for DuPage County Board, and who's running for judge and things like that. And so this person will be familiar with those candidates. And so they can give you more information on it. They don't care about people who don't vote. And you gotta think, oh, voting's like this secret thing. Everybody knows everybody who votes. It's all public information. And so there's a list that's published each year by the County Board of Elections, and they give it to the Democrats and the Republicans. And the Republicans and Democrats know exactly who voted in the primaries, whether or not you voted as a Democrat, whether or not you voted as a Republican. They know if you vote in the general election, and they even know if you vote in like the local elections, school board, village board, things like that. And so they know if you voted, they know if you chose a ballot for a Democrat or a Republican.